Today I'm painting this beautiful little bunch of flowers from the viburnum bush in my yard, and this is how it turned out. Stay tuned and you'll see the whole process. To be honest, I've contemplated doing this kind of flower for quite a while and just kind of went, oh my goodness, don't go there. But they're so pretty, and I thought I would use it to show just gradations in really pale colors. And I'm using a pen that's 005 micron graphic pen. And the reason I'm going with this one, which does a super fine line, is that because these are really fine blossoms, I don't want the ink to sort of take over. As always, I'm going to start with whatever's closest to me, which in this case is this flower here. So I'm seeing this from a different angle than you are. It's almost like, I don't know, 45-degree angle or something. I'm going to start, because I've got leaves behind, they're going to come up this way. So, and I think I'm just going to kind of make this pretty close to real size. So in the center, it just has this little sort of starburst of, I guess, stamens with tiny little brown ends on them, and they're different lengths. See? Just kind of like that. And now and all these have 4 petals. So I'm just going to carefully draw them as close to the original size as I can, hopefully in kind of the same place they're supposed to be. That one got a little bit too small. And then another one that's close to me is, and here's one thing you can do, you can measure using the thing itself. So this measurement here of this petal, for example, is not quite 5/8 of an inch. Call it, well, I would call it a centimeter if you're familiar with that. So I can say, how far does this, is it from this one to this one? Well, it's about the same length as the leaf, or the petal, I mean. So that means I can start down here, and I also can go line this up with kind of like the tip of this petal. So that means I can just do this. You can actually see a little kind of corner of the petal. And as I always say, if it doesn't look exact, just move on. It doesn't have to. It's art, it's not photography. And with photography, you can get a whole different look, but it's not such an artistic look as if you're working by hand. It's just how it is. And then we've got some more of these little stamen deals in the middle. Now, did I do a good job of this one? Probably not. Not very. However, it is what it is, and the shapes, because it's at a tilt, they came out kind of funny. But I don't care. How's that for Cavalier? Speaking of Cavalier, whenever I hear that word, I think about this. Many years ago, my husband and I and our 2 children moved to France because it was my dream to live in France. And so we just went, okay, let's sell the house and pick up and figure it out when we get there, which we did. And we ended up, because my husband was born in Britain, he could work in the European community. We ended up getting a position at an 18th century estate in Provence. And the owners, who incidentally were an American couple, so it was easy for us to communicate with them. We both know a bit of French, but we're not really that great at it. Anyway, they raised Cavalier King Charles Spaniels. And I'm not sure that raised is quite the right word, because the dogs just kind of raised themselves and multiplied on their own kind of thing, because the couple was away a lot. So our job was to feed the dogs and just make the place look lived in. And other than that, we could do what we wanted, which was wonderful. I homeschooled my children, who were 7 and 12 at the time. It was a great time to take them out of the country and into an adventure, and none of us have ever regretted it. So when we came back to Canada sometime later, we kind of started over. And we started over in a place we had never lived before. Now, I'm a lot more adventurous than my husband is, so it's kind of a tribute to his, how much he loves me, I guess, that he would even go for this cockamamie plan. But he will still say that it was one of the best things that we ever did. So there you go. So on that front, I would say, there's something that you really long to do. Sometimes there's a reason besides just, to fulfill your own wishes. Sometimes it's something that God has put in your heart to do. And you, of course, want to check with Him. Don't just make big moves without taking time to think about it and pray about it if you're a praying person. If you're not, I recommend it. Kind of fill in all the spaces here. Anyway, we owned a home and the kids were in school, and it was just a dream of mine. I always wanted to live in France. Being a Canadian, you learn French in high school. It was compulsory in those days, and I loved it. And I'm good at it. I'm good at pronunciation. And even when I have a chance to use it on a regular basis, I get better. But you know how it is, you don't use something and you tend to lose it. Okay, let's see, we've got this little guy here. Also, just so you know, you don't have to, if you've got something that's this complicated, you don't have to put everything in. You can actually allude to it. But I'm just kind of getting carried away here, and I'm putting a lot of it in. So on that topic, life changes as you go through, and sometimes what you wanted one year is not what you want another time. And sometimes, what I said to my husband when he was like really dragging his heels about this sell up and move to France thing, I said, I don't want to get to be 60 and never have done it. And so he finally agreed. Capitulated might be a better word. Anyway, when I got to be 60, I remembered what I'd said, and I thought, you know what? I don't regret it for a minute. Sure, there was hard things to do and figure things out, and we didn't start out in Provence. We started out in the Burgundy, and then it just didn't work out, and we had to make changes and whatever. We had a bit of backup because my sister lived in Switzerland at the time, so we could actually go somewhere to regroup, but it didn't take us long. And then things just worked out, because God had worked them out for us. And I think that's so wonderful. It's supposed to kind of overlap or underlap this one, but I didn't do it quite right. Anyway, so often we put off things that we really long to do. I'm reading this book called A Million Little Ways by Emily Freeman. She talks about that, how those things that are really the desire of your heart, so often we negate them and just say, well, really, it's not practical. I can't do that. And you get busy with life and kids or family or jobs or all kinds of stuff, right? And we push our real heartfelt desires aside. I think that's all I'll do. Okay. Anyway, there's a verse in the Bible that says, delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. And there's a prerequisite, that's delighting yourself in the Lord. But also, the desires that you have in your heart come from Him. So if you delight yourself in Him, He gives them to you, and then He fulfills them. Now, I've mentioned this before. This green is one that I don't especially like. I'm just going to move this stuff over. Because it's kind of scratchy, I think it's hard on the brushes. But I like this one, and I think it makes a good leaf green here. Especially with a little of this in it. So, okay, I'm going to try not to be too precious about this. I'm going to just kind of paint them in here. So that Bible verse about the desires of your heart, so many people, you know, number one, don't even know the verses in the Bible, or don't ever talk to God, or don't ever read the book. You know, I get that. Some people just don't. I think you're missing out, but that's from my experience. I can say that. However, a lot of people think God's mad at them, and I'm here to tell you He's not. So there's that. Anyway, I'm going to make this a little darker in here. Same with this one. Just for a little color. And I'm also not going to worry about having watermarks, because they will occur, and I don't want this to take all day. So there's our beautiful drawing. I really love the fine pen, because then it doesn't take over. All those lines kind of don't take over. Like that. Okay. Now we tackle the tricky part, and that is these pale pink flowers. And what I'm going to do with these ones is use a color from this set. Oh, wait, maybe not. I have this one called Pastel Dreams, and we've got this color. I actually bought a bunch more and stuck them in here because I took it to Rome with me when I went a couple of years ago. Now, do I want a smaller brush? This is a size, well, you can't go by the sizes because it depends where they come from. It says 6, but then so does this, and they're nowhere near each other. All right, let me see how this looks. Okay, now you will recall that I always say to test your colors. I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go with this rose color, like that. I'm going to mix it up first, okay? I'll just put this over here so you can see it. But I'm not going to put it on first. First, I'm going to put water on this flower, which is probably the pinkest one. And then I'm going to pick up the paint and just dot it around the edges, because that's where the color is. And let it run into the water. Now, what happens if it doesn't? Well, then we do this. Wet the edge a little bit more. See that? Swish, swish, dab, dab. Like that. That's how it's done, okay? So I'm going to do all the petals like this. Make sure it has enough water in it. Make sure there's enough water on the paint to pick up paint. That's very suitably watery. Okay, it's a little bit too wet. See that? But I'm going to push it around to the edge anyway, and I'll show you what you can do. This one's okay. All right, I'm going to take this and take pretty much all the water out of the brush. And then I'm using it kind of like a sponge. I can pick up that paint and push it back. See that? Make sure it's nice and clean. Pick up the paint. All right, paint nice and wet, so there's lots to pick up. Don't get too much on the brush. Now I'm doing ones that aren't side by side for a reason, because if I get too close, that means I could hit the one next, and then they'll just all flow into each other. So I'm going to just stop talking and speed this up a little bit, and then you can watch it. Now I just have to touch this up, fill in the stems and things down here, and I think that's it. I hope that helped you get a sense of how to work with the water and the paint so that you get that gradient edge. Don't aim for perfection, aim for watercolor, and you'll just enjoy it a whole lot more. Now there are people, and I've done it myself, realistic, like photorealistic watercolor. You can do it if you want to, but if you don't, you can also produce beautiful watercolors without much effort. So this whole thing took me less than 25 minutes. Please check the link below for my course and subscribe to my channel and click the little bell so you get the notifications, and I'll see you next time.